We're back today to talk about the triggers of inflammation in Hashimoto's. Last time we spoke in detail about foods. Today, let's dive into toxins. Most people are told Hashimoto's is about thyroid hormone. So, how do toxins fit in?
Toxins fit in with everybody, especially Hashimoto's patients, because there's a lot of toxins that we're exposed to can be endocrine disrupting compounds. That's one. And additionally, they are, when you get an accumulation of toxins built up, your immune system starts to lose tolerance. So, like losing tolerance could mean your immune system loses the ability to recognize self from non self. So this is well established in the literature. It's called TILT, or toxicant-induced loss of tolerance,
Mhm.
right? So that says it all right there. So these toxins, or toxicants, as they're called, will kind of burden your immune system to the point where it can no longer understand what it's doing, right? It loses the ability to recognize self from non-self. Like, is that my thyroid, or is that a bacteria or virus or whatever? So
Mhm.
that's some of the crux of it here. There's a little bit more to it, but we're all exposed to it, right? This is one of those things that 100% of us is exposed to more environmental toxins and pollutants than humans were originally designed or adapted to or developed and such. And we all have different, abilities to handle toxins. But
So,
for sure, we're all way more exposed than we should be.
right. And when people hear toxins, I feel like they think extreme exposure. Is that accurate?
Yeah, well, it could be, but it's more commonly like low grade daily exposure.
Mhm. So let's get into some specifics on toxins. First being air pollutants.
Mhm. Yeah, we have outdoor and we have indoor.
Hmm.
Outdoor is going to be things that we're exposed to with regards to like power plants giving off things like mercury and other pollutants. On the outdoor front, if you look at the map of the U.S., you'll see where there's a lot of agriculture, like big ag, not
Hmm.
organic farms. You'll see that there's also increased cancer rates in those regions too. So we know for sure that a lot of chemicals that are used for agriculture, whether it be herbicides or pesticides or whatever, um, get into the water supply and affect people negatively, right? So cancer is another extreme example of the immune system not being competent anymore. It can't recognize cancer cells and things of this nature. But to keep it at Hashimoto's, you also see a lot more incidents of Hashimoto's creeping up where chemical burden or toxic burden becomes the greatest.
Hmm.
So specifically, that's some outdoor things that we're exposed to. Now, indoor, we have a whole bunch of things too, right? Right, we've got like flame retardants, like a lot of furniture, carpets, things of this nature are off-gassing flame retardants,
Hmm.
right? These are extremely toxic to us. Do they diminish over time? Sure, but this is a lot of low-grade exposure um, over time. We got things indoors like molds,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Which is a whole nother. This can spill over into the next category of infectious triggers too. So that's like some outdoor and indoor exposure of things that we touch, we inhale,
Mhm.
etc. Um, and then we could probably get into plastics there. I don't know if you wanted to keep it to that.
Well, my next question was in ingested chemicals, which I first think of as BPA, plastics, drinking out of
Mhm.
plastic water bottles. Can you explain
Well, still
there?
the most amount of plastic exposure is going to be from drinking containers and plastic water bottles, but there's obviously a lot more, right? If you put food in plastic container, especially if it's hot, it's
Mhm.
going to leach out.
Right.
Um, if there's like a beverage in plastic, especially when the pH starts getting a little more acidy, like people
Yeah.
drinking soda type of things. It's going to leach more plastics into there as well, right?
Mhm.
And even the paper type of cups that you might get from certain coffee retailers, they look like paper, but there's plastic lining inside of that as well.
Mhm.
A lot
Right.
of cans are lined with
Yeah.
plastics. And there's BPA. BPA is well established to be a Hashimoto's trigger, right? You can see
Yeah.
the data on that. You go to PubMed and look that up. But there's more than BPA, right? There's different bisphenols. So bisphenol A, bisphenol S. I mean, all of them are bad. It's just that we have the data and people know about BPA, right? So you can see on a water bottle or some sort of like kids drinking cup, BPA free, but that doesn't mean it doesn't have a different bisphenol in it,
Right.
right? And then
Mhm.
again, you touch a lot of receipts, right? They appear to be paper from those thermal registers where you're signing receipts and such,
Mhm.
but most of them have plastic in there. You see the ones with a little bit of sheen or shine to it. There's
Mhm.
plastics, and a 5-second exposure on your finger, you absorb it directly through your skin. So
That's
plastics obviously a problem. I mean, those are some of the common ones. People might chime in and say I missed one, so I'm sure I did,
well,
but
the thing that I thought of was also too, with the food is when you go to the grocery store, a lot of them are already a cucumber or something is already wrapped in plastic, so the plastic's on the food, and then you have the 5-second exposure because you're picking up the food and purchasing it, and then you're touching the plastic as
yeah,
well. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And if you also think about what kids drink, kids do sporting things, drinking, artificial colored beverages or whatever in
Mhm.
plastic. Now, these plastic bottles get transported from somewhere. And
Mhm.
is it possible that maybe that sat around a truck, it got exposed to heat, right? So
Yeah.
it degrades the plastic, ends up in the drink supply, right? So then you got a double thing where you're getting plastic exposure on top of whatever other garbage is in these drinks.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So the next one I wanted to go over was mold exposure.
Mhm. Yeah, again, so mold can
Yeah.
be like an active infection too, right? So we
Mhm.
can have active mold infection, whether it be in the skin, like a tinea albicans or tinea versicolor, something like that. But it could also be systemic in the body, right? So, but in particular, certain molds give off certain mold toxins. These are called mycotoxins, right?
Mhm.
Some of them are a lot more pathogenic than others. And some people are very sensitive to them, and
Mhm.
some people are less sensitive to them. There's gonna be some genetic variations. In with all of this, one of the reasons why some people are more sensitive than others is gonna be, 1, come down to total toxic burden through your lifetime, but also there's some detox, pathway, variations with different genetic type of profiles, right? So somebody like I've been, sensitive to chemicals most of my life,
Mhm.
right? And some people not so much. But for sure, mold exposure is not good for us,
Right.
right? So again, talking mycotoxins, mycotoxins are relatively easy to detox compared to some of the other things we're talking about, but that's assuming you don't have continued exposure.
Right.
And
Right.
that's the big problem. A lot of people can't just move.
Right. Um, what about heavy metals?
Yeah, heavy metals is huge. It's not one that's can affect every single Hashimoto's patient because you could. Now we all have heavy metals. Like you can even go back and take samples from people from thousands of years ago, and you're going to see like metal exposure, different
Exposure.
types,
Yeah.
like lead and things like that. But for sure, mercury, arsenic, cadmium, lead, these things are definite triggers for immune responses, right? You're more sensitive to these things. They all go through different pathways of detoxification. So, like, take mercury, for example, it requires adequate glutathione in order to detoxify,
Mhm.
right? That's if you have active exposure, which that would show up in a blood test. Like you go and you get mercury tested, and like, oh, your levels are high. You must be eating fish, or you must have had certain things injected into you, or whatever.
Mhm.
You can detox that relatively easily. But the problem is like long-term exposure to these
Mhm.
things. And you could even pick this up from umbilical cord blood. So you may have had this your entire life, picking it
Yeah.
up from the mother,
Right.
and your glutathione levels are depleted. One, you're more prone to expressing Hashimoto's in the first place, or any other autoimmune disease for that matter. Two, you're going to have a decreased ability to detoxify things like mercury, right? And that stuff can store in body fat, in neurological tissue like brain tissue,
Mhm.
right? Or in hair, obviously, because that's one way to test it, right? You could do a test to see if it's in your blood, if it's
Right.
active. You could do in the urine to see if your body's getting rid of some of these,
Mhm.
and you can do hair sample, which is not in the cards for me, but you can do a hair sample to see if it's been stored.
Right. Right.
And all that being said, still doesn't mean your immune system is definitely reacting to it, right? So with regards, I know you didn't ask about testing, but with regards to testing, you could check all those things there. But again, somebody might do those things and say, I've got mercury. Now I know what to do. I'm going to detox it and everything's going to be good. But I've seen that not work out just as well, because there's again a different test you can run to see if your immune system is actually reacting to mercury. Then
Okay.
that would be a little bit more of a smoking gun. Do you
Right.
have it? Yes. Is your immune system reacting to it? Yes. Then that would be a little bit more of an appropriate time to go aggressive at detoxing.
Right. That makes sense. Okay. What about endocrine disrupting chemicals?
Yeah, a lot of the things we already mentioned are EDCs,
Okay.
right? And then there's a whole bunch of other ones. A lot of them are in our personal care products
Right.
and our other
What are
household
what are
cleaning,
the most common source that people may not be aware of?
right? So things like commercially made perfumes and such.
Mhm.
Um, there's going to be other hormones that can be endocrine disrupting. But
Is
with
that
regards to
but with perfumes, you're saying all beauty products, lotions, makeups?
a lot of commercially produced things, are going to have some EDCs in there, right? There's different, like you could pull up a list from EWG.org about these different endocrine disrupting compounds. Um, but a lot of those are going to come from household products, household cleaning products, personal care products, right? You look at a Hashimoto's patient putting perfume like right over the thyroid, like
Yeah,
it kind of freaks me out.
right. Well, one thing I think of too, I mean, I know it's winter here, but is suntan lotion, right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
That's a
I
big
forgot
one.
about that one. Yeah,
Yeah,
so you've got, what in a plastic bottle, then you've got, these
yeah,
well-established toxins
yeah,
uh, driving directly into your skin, getting absorbed,
yeah,
um, can screw with your thyroid function, and it's almost everyone, right? It's
yeah,
almost ubiquitous across at least the U.S.
yep. And, what about industrial chemical exposure?
So I mean, we're all getting some of that. If you live near places where there's a lot of industry, you're going
Yep,
to have a bit more of exposure.
yep,
Um, you look at other industrial compounds, like we mentioned before a little bit, but herbicides and pesticides, but also just not even on the agricultural front, but on our um, lawns, things like
yep,
this, golf courses. Um, if your kids go to school, pretty likely that they're being exposed to some of these chemical
mhm,
cleaning products, industrial chemicals. Um, so it's ultimately really bad. A lot of the country has well water, which one it's good because you don't have the chlorine and fluoride added to it,
mhm,
because those are in the category of chemicals called halides, which are very detrimental to thyroid.
mhm,
But well water isn't really like purified or tested or filtered or anything also.
right,
So whereas I think it's better to have well water, but you also don't want a bunch of chemicals and toxins, right? You're spraying weed killers and
yeah.
all sorts of things on your lawn to make it look pretty, but it could be wrecking your own health.
Well, and it's also not just your lawn. If your neighbors, even if you don't and your neighbors are, you're still gonna be affected by it.
Yeah, like there's no
right.
Beyond the fence,
Yeah, it
there's no
doesn't
way
stop.
to prevent it
Yeah,
from running down.
right, right. Anything else you could share with us? Toxins in
Um,
general?
some of the key things is as when your antioxidant reserves get depleted, you're going to be more susceptible to toxic burdens, right? So you want to mitigate exposure as much as you can. This is the kind of thing where people get overwhelmed, like, oh, everything's toxic, everything's killing
Right.
me. So then they just say, screw
Give
it.
up.
And
Yep.
then they don't think about it anymore. But you could do it in a pretty systematic fashion. Like the way I handle Hashimoto's patients is I usually don't put this first
Okay.
because it's so overwhelming, unless it's extremely clear that this is the number one trigger category for them.
Right,
Right.
right,
And if it is, then we'll go for it. We'll just try to manage um, them from getting overwhelmed.
right.
Okay. So, but it's the kind of thing where you could trickle in a systematic fashion. Like, am I using plastics? Are we going to say get rid of every single plastic? It's really going to be overwhelming to do so. But you could start getting rid of things that are like plastic water bottles. It's like,
Yep.
okay, week one, no more
Mhm.
plastic water bottles.
Yep, yep.
Okay. Then we might add in some antioxidants through food,
Mhm,
right? So you get your antioxidant reserves built up to mitigate some of the oxidative stress. You're going to be able to detox a little bit more,
mhm.
right? So people look at detox as an event versus a process.
Right.
Your body's detoxifying or going through a process called what's called detoxification, or more proper now is biotransformation,
Mm.
right? To biotransform these toxins to one, break them down, and two, eliminate them from the body, right? So it's like, all right, you start to limit exposure in a non-stressful way,
Yep.
right? Is everyone going to rip up their carpets and everything else tomorrow? Probably not. But if you have an active exposure to, say, plastics or phthalates or whatever, you can start to mitigate that, and then you can start to support detox pathways, right? What's
Mhm.
called phase one, phase two, phase three of liver biotransformation or detoxification, because that's ongoing. It's like you don't have to be on a cleanse to be detoxifying, but you can support detox pathways. And maybe the first step would be to enhance your antioxidant reserves, right? So then after you do that, then you could start getting a little bit more into some of the other things. Like maybe if you're working one on one with somebody, if I suspect mold in them, we're going to want to go with the most common things first. Like, do we want to look at is your laundry situation? Did you actually look for leaks? Right?
Mhm.
There's different ways to test for mold, which I think we should do a whole hour on mold.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, what is the most common that you find with patients when there is mold exposure? It's from the home, it's from what is it from?
So if you do a mold test, so if you do what's called a urinary mycotoxin screening, it'll tell you which mycotoxins are there, and then that kind of narrows down where it's from. Sometimes you find it foodborne,
Oh, okay.
and then sometimes you find it like more of an inhaled thing. It's not a perfect test, but I think it's pretty good. So if we're thinking it's from the house, you either have to look, do testing. There's certain testing which is kind of like you take like a Swiffer type thing, and you swab different areas and you run it through. There's obviously cost involved with this.
Yep.
Another cool way is I mean, basically, I could go in somewhere and tell if there's mold, but I'm not going to be as sensitive as a test, right? There's also mold sniffing dogs these days, which I think is pretty cool.
Yeah, interesting.
Um, so then, okay, so like, all right, if there we find this mold exposure, if it's from food, that's pretty easy. Like, we're going to stop eating processed food commodities. We're not going to have coffee that has mold toxins in them. We're going to like rice and things like that, or kind of can absorb toxins. Stuff that's grown in water, right, is more likely to have toxins built up in there. Not just mold toxins, but like arsenic and things like that.
Yeah,
So we look for those exposures for mold, and then you can use binders, things like that, to try to get rid of mold toxins in your body.
yeah,
But again, if you have active exposure, it's kind of like you're just painting over rust. at that point. So
You
I'd say
finally
another day we dive into
and
mold.
then do the binders.
Yeah, I mean, it depends how bad it is. I mean, you could always start binders, but understand that it's not going to be fixed
Right,
until
until
your
you find the
exposure
source.
is mitigated. Same with plastics, like or mercury, you could detox, but if you've got, say, I don't know, amalgam fillings that are off-gassing mercury into you, and I'm not saying go get those out because that could get a little dicey too. You really have to go to like a biological dentist who knows what they're doing if you had mercury fillings in there,
Right,
see if it's worth it to get them out and then for them to do it properly.
right, right.
Cool, but I think that's a good surface level
Yeah, I'm
once
looking
over.
forward to doing, an entire segment on just mold.
Awesome. Well,
Yeah.
get ready for it.
I'll get my questions.
All right.